This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
Hey, I'm Amanda from Trifecta Fitness. We're proud to be Clarksville's new Get Fit headquarters. Trifecta Fitness is a state-of-the-art spin and strength training studio. Our spin studio is truly one of a kind in this area, complete with 20 state-of-the-art live fitness bikes and an incredible sound system. Our strength training is done in small groups of 6 or fewer, and all of our strength and spin classes are scalable for every level of experience. Come see us in the heart of Clarksville, just behind MAPCO at the corner of Old Trenton Road and Wilma Rudolph Boulevard. Call us for more info at 931-542-6265 or download our Trifecta Fitness app for a full list of upcoming classes.
Welcome back. MisFitNation. MisFitNation. We are a show founded by veterans and hosted by veterans and a military spouse. Our mission is to get people to tell their story to the world. If you're an author, share your tips with the Misfit Nation. If you're a musician or actor, our audience needs to know how they too can get into the business. Coaches, we love our coaches. Come on, share some of your tips with the audience to help them become better versions of themselves. If you're a corporate leader or an entrepreneur, come on and share how you did it and how hard you have fought for success. If you're a veteran, first responder, or Gold Star family, we would love to have you come on and just share your story with the Misfit Nation. We always have time for you. Reach out, we will get you on. If you are feeling down, alone, or starting to see the darkness, stop. Think about those who are around you. You are not alone. You will be missed. If you feel like your problems will be a burden to those in your inner circle, or are embarrassed to share that with them, please dial 988. If you are a veteran, take option 1. We need you to keep pushing forward. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you're a new listener, welcome to the Misfit Nation. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast apps and also on our YouTube channel at @the_MisFitNation. That's @the_MisFitNation. Subscribe and click the bell. This will keep you up to date with all of our latest episodes and all of our news. You can also find us on Electrocast Media and About Face Radio. This will keep you tuned into us and learn more about our great guests. Speaking of which, our next guest comes to us via referral, and a good conversation between the two of us is about to be had. So welcome to Misfit Nation, Cindy Adams. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Glad we're able to connect, even though we had a little hiccup yesterday, but we're back together today.
Yep.
So, Cindy, like I told you in the pre-show, I'd like to introduce my guest. I didn't have a lot on you, so I'd love for you to just give us some background and let us know more about you so the audience and the Misfit Nation can get to know you better.
All right. Well, I spent most of my career at the University of Connecticut as a professor, and I'm a psychologist, so I was teaching the human side of patient care to future health professionals. They could deal with depression, they could deal with loss, they could deal with all the things that are part of the human condition when you're going through health problems. And I enjoyed that very much. And I also had a private practice part-time through all the time I was at the university, and then continued that when I retired. But there was a book I wanted to write about my mother-in-law's family. They had been in Slovenia, which is was a part of Yugoslavia when World War II broke out. And there were 6 kids that came of age just as Hitler was flying over the Alps right at them. They have a unique story. Each one of them kind of went in a different direction. Each one of them went through different, very harrowing things. They were certainly very anti-Nazi, very anti-communist, but one uncle ended up spending his 4 years pretty much of active duty in a POW, Nazi POW camp. And so I get very into all of their stories, separate and then together, but especially his. And that's why I wrote this book called The Red Toque, which means a red hat. It enters into the story if you read it. Love and loss in the time of Tito, because Tito ended up taking over governance of their country because of some flukes in how the communists appeared to serve the um, the Allies during that war and all that went along with that. But because he suffered so much and because of all that the soldiers, Americans and those who had their lives lost, that were both civilians and Americans lost, I wrote this book and am giving a large portion of the proceeds to wounded warriors.
Wow, that's awesome. Awesome journey you've been on. UConn, great school to be at, great school to
Yeah.
get education from, and of course, be a professor there. So you just threw that out like it was a little nugget. UConn, University of Connecticut. That's a
Well,
great
if you
school.
like basketball, you
On both sides of the ball too. For a long time, both men's and women were very good. Gino's a great coach up there for the
he
women.
sure is.
I'm sure he's thinking about his next part of his career soon. Need to spend time with his grandkids and just relax after a while. But I don't know what he'll do after basketball. But
I don't know either.
we know what you're doing now, and the psychology, depression. That's big on our show. So a lot of our listeners suffer from PTSD or some form of trauma that caused them to have depression and go through, like we, if you heard in the intro, the darkness. And
I did,
we
yeah.
lose 22 veterans a day now due to
Ugh,
that problem, and that's part of why we started the show, to try to stop that, and having experts like yourself to come on and also talk. I want to talk about your book too. So that's an amazing journey as well. But as you sit and watch what's going on with the veterans right now, do you think there's a? I know there's not one just one tool to help every person. There's not one magic potion to help each person. But is there, what tips would you give veterans that are going through the struggle right now to maybe fight through it?
absolutely, and I have worked in this area, hands-on. And the number one thing, and you stress it in your commercial, is don't take a permanent solution for a temporary problem. And that's, as a psychologist, what I always say to people: if you commit suicide, we can't help you. We can't fix it. But if you just hang on, that's why psychologists and psychiatrists are always against suicide, because there's no going back, and yet we know there's a fix if you hang on. Sometimes it's medication. Sometimes it's getting off substances that are you abuse a substance and it wipes things out for a while and you feel good for a while, but it doesn't last and it only makes it worse in the long run. So we have to work as a team on many angles: family life, behavioral counseling, um, but the counseling that involves medications or getting off of certain things is essential. And socialization. There's nothing like as happy as a veterans group when they get together. I think I love seeing it, especially the older guys, really, because they've finally gotten through much of that depression and they have the pride. And
Right.
I think the pride is very worth waiting for if these younger guys could just hang on. And it may be that the wars are a little worse now. I don't know that they could be than World War One or though all the way through, but when you come home, you don't feel that you're a hero, perhaps, and you are. You served your nation. And when my dad was in World War II, of course, I didn't know him at that time. I was born later, thank goodness. But everything he talked about the rest of his life, and he lived a long time, began with when I was in the service. And it was almost comical, but he was so proud of it. And also, it was the most meaningful thing he'd ever done. You can sell houses and insurance, but does that mean the same to you as when you were out there fighting or working for your country. So there's a lot to be proud of.
Definitely. And when I sit and talk with my dad now, he's 82 now. He'll talk about his time in the service. He was between wars, so he was between Korea and Vietnam. So that's where his age group fell. So he served 4 years in there. Same time Elvis served. He was in Germany at the same time as
Wow.
Elvis. But he always talks about his time in service and the things that he went through just in them 4 years. And it's still picture perfect memories. And the stories haven't changed in my whole life that he's been telling me. And he's part of the reason I joined the army. So those stories really helped me to gain that confidence to go and make a career of the army and stay with it.
That's great. That's a great story.
So I enjoyed having that time with him, and all his buddies would tell me all their stories from their service too. Like I was just this little sponge that could absorb everything, but they wouldn't tell anyone else. So I just accepted it and kind of kept it in my head. Never wrote anything down. And looking back now, I wish I wrote a lot of things they told me down because it would have helped me in my career and maybe in my creative side now.
Well, if you want to write a book, you find that if you start to write those memories, at least this is what happened for me, more of it comes out as you put down a memory. Oh, you think of this and then that, and pretty soon you can piece together fairly accurately things that happened a long time ago. But when you heard them, they were very salient. They meant a lot. They were, maybe they surprised you, maybe you were in awe. But if you write it down and start now, it's not too late to get a lot of that, i-
Exactly,
in my
definitely.
opinion.
You're right. And like you said, when you're writing a book, you have to do some reach back, especially like you did yours based off your family. So you had to reach back and talk to each member or all of them together, and you find out more things and more little webs that come out, and you find more and more and more. So I'm sure this is what happened when you were writing the Red Toque. Uh, that's an awesome way to learn more about your family history, but also put it on paper.
Well, it was a little bit sad that I waited too long to actually speak to many of them, but they had children alive, and I had talked to some of them, and I had some of it written down. And I also did a lot of research about that time and the times before then that had led up to them. So I had to learn more about World War I before I could write about World War II. And you put it all together, and then you get some people who are still alive to give you an opinion, and some real historians, and it helps a lot. So it's not a perfect true story. It is a novel. It's historical fiction. I call it that because I couldn't possibly know the conversations that I put into making this a story. But as much as humanly possible, it follows the truth about the wars and where those people in my story actually went, and how they got through things.
While you were writing, did you get a chance to go visit into Europe and see any of the sites where your family was from?
Yes, just to segue quickly, my dad met my mother during the war in Italy.
Oh wow.
So I have an Italian war bride mother. Then my husband's mother is also a war bride from Slovenia. So I had been to Italy many times because of my family of origin, but and lots of cousins over there and everything. But my husband and I had never been to Slovenia, which is just a few hundred miles away. It's much harder to get to though because it's not as popular a tourist destination. It should be, it's beautiful. But anyway, we did go over, even though it was during COVID. We had that third shot, which was the frosting on the cake at that point, and they welcomed us, although generally they didn't want anyone in the country. But when they saw we had so many shots, they let us in. And we found their gravesite of his grandparents that we hadn't known where it was. We actually stayed with a family. They rented apartments that the grandmother of the home said, "Oh, I know of that family." And she had been born the year that many of them were the younger people were just leaving, but she knew the family. She knew that the grandfather of my husband had donated his farm to the church when he died, and they had made a cemetery there. And that's where that's where they were buried, in his farmland, which was kind of ironic. But we kept stumbling into coincidences like that. They were unbelievable. A cousin was here and hadn't changed the name, and people called us and said, "Yes, we're related," and the word got around. It was really great.
That's outstanding.
Yeah.
I'm sure you met a lot of great cousins and people who just wanted to talk to you at that point. Say, yeah, I knew this person that was part of your family, and I got this story about him.
Yes, and after we left the country, we still got phone calls, kind of pushed over from this family we had been staying with. They said, "Oh, we ran into this woman. She says you was your mother-in-law's best friend," and so we continued to receive contacts. In fact, there's been so much enthusiasm for the book over there that I'm currently in the process of getting it translated to Slovenian,
Oh,
which is
wow.
its own unique language. Even though it's a small country, I think it'll be a very popular book there, and we'll see. I hope that they will read more about themselves because some of this book wasn't talked about, even though it happened there, because of Tito. The communists were so anti the truth when it came to their heavy-handed doings. As we're finding hidden bodies in Ukraine now, people had been blown up and attacked, and civilians left in poor ways. At the end of World War II, anyone who wasn't on the side of the communists was subject to terrible horrors. And, people were murdered in huge numbers, and the bodies were left in old mines and in mountains. And some people witnessed this, but they were so terrified of the retaliation that they never spoke of it. Even when Tito died in 1980, they still wouldn't dare to talk about it. Communists were still in charge till 1990. And it's only been a little bit since then that some of these folks who witnessed the crimes were talking. So this is probably the first book written by an American that talks about this stuff openly. A few Slovenians have dared to, but you know, it's the first one, I think.
It's always good to be the first of anything, especially when you have
Yes.
that many people giving you input into it. And you're right, the anyone who spoke out against anyone on the Eastern Bloc communist regime from 1945 on until, like you said, 1990 and beyond, were basically tortured or killed on the spot, and for years to come. And families had to go in hiding. Families were separated because of this, and took a long time to get back together.
I'm glad you understand that because in the places I've discussed the book, there are people that one woman came up to me and she said, "I always knew the communists were bad, but until you told this story, I didn't understand what they did or why." And I thought, my gosh, it's a different world, isn't it? You
Yes.
know, it's a different world. But yeah, there's a lot of naivete about what they're like.
It
Yes.
a lot of it comes from studying, I guess, reading a lot of military history, a lot of history books helped me out to learn, and of course, visiting other countries really helps when you see things from the other side of it, not just from what we see here or what we is portrayed on TV here. You can see things when you look at it personally. So, wow, this was really bad here, or these people really went through a lot to get where they are today. And I'm glad a lot of those countries are prospering now or trying to prosper now.
Yes, they're doing much better. Although who knows what's going to happen next over in Eastern Europe, things are tough or
It's a
frightening. Yeah.
tinder box, I like to call it right now. So you said alluded to earlier, one of your relatives was a POW in a German POW camp. Uh,
Yeah, a Nazi camp.
were you able to talk to that person, or was it one of their, I guess, relatives or offspring?
He's one of the key people in the book.
Okay.
And the red I don't know how it's the opposite
Yeah.
of what the red toque. Anyway, his store oh, thank
Okay.
you.
There you go.
Giving me a little more camera. Whoops.
There you go. There you go. We got it.
Okay. Anyway,
You're
the red toque,
yeah,
love and loss in the time of Tito.
awesome.
Um, he is no longer living. World War II was a long time ago, and what he went through is a big part of the story. So this is sort of hesitation on my part as a spoiler alert. I don't want to. If you read the book, there's some real suspense in it, several places, but especially about how he leaves the prison camp and what happens next. One of the sisters in the family is actually trying to cross the Atlantic Ocean in the height of the war, and her group of boats is torpedoed by the Nazis. And that story and this one are very suspenseful. Plus, the romance wasn't always wonderful over there either. There was quick decisions made. Sometimes they were happy, sometimes they weren't. Sometimes disappointments. The book tries to tell the story of these six young people as it really happened. And
That's outstanding. And I
well,
think with the suspense angle to multiple stories in there, keeps the reader involved and makes them want to turn that next page or the next chapter to get to that part where they want to see what happens to person A or person B and
yeah,
get
I think thank you. I think it is a page turner. I think it's a story that many people are loving. It's gotten quite a bit of publicity in Europe, but then they can't buy it in their language, so I'm working on changing that. Yeah.
and you can find it here at all book sales, booksellers, or is it just Amazon or Barnes and
Amazon is the only place right now, but Amazon has it easily. And I have a website if you don't find it on Amazon because Cynthia Herbert Adams or Cynthia Adams may easily show up, but sometimes on Amazon it doesn't show up as easy as other days. But my website is simple. If you go to your www.getbooksbycindy.com, just getbooksbycindy.com, and you'll get this kind of the spreadsheet of the books I've written, and each one has the term buy this book underneath it. If you press on that button, you'll go immediately to Amazon. No price change, just the same. And the paperback for the Red Toque, of course, will help wounded warriors if you buy it.
that's outstanding. And Wounded Warrior Project was vital in my exit from the military. When I came out of the military, they helped me out a lot with my mental health and helping me to find work and stuff. When I came out, I had a year that it took me to find work.
Wow.
It was a long journey for me, but they stayed with me the whole time and pushed me
Wow.
to where I am now. And I'm always thankful for them. And they sent me and my wife on a retreat together, and that really helped us as well. And that's when I came back from that retreat and found my first job after 365 days.
Wow. Well, that's quite a journey.
Yes.
But I'm glad that they follow through, that they don't just say, "Well, you've had 6 weeks, goodbye."
Oh no,
That
they're all
no,
over you.
that's great. That's wonderful.
So it's been a great chatting with you, learning a little more about you than I knew 30 minutes ago, obviously. But
Maybe than you ever wanted to know, but anyway.
no, this is great.
Well,
You said this would be you were well worth it, and I think you are well worth it. I'm probably going to look up this book later and probably suggest it to our neighborhood has a book club. I'll suggest it to them to do that, so the ladies have something to read and chat about. Uh,
well, I'd be
every month.
very honored if you do that.
I just put your website up on right underneath the screen there so people can see it.
Oh, thank you.
So hopefully I got that
Yeah,
right. Get books by Cindy. Yep, good.
yeah.
Sometimes I do weird
Get
fingering
books
things.
by Cindy.com. That's it.
So
You're very good.
thank you. So
Good.
you gave tips on depression and psychology. How about tips on writing a book? You just did it, and obviously it's doing well. What tips would you give an author as they're trying to get their book going and maybe be successful at it?
Okay, I'd be happy to help anyone. First, you need the idea. What is it you want to write about? It can be based on a true story, but it can also be based on other things that have been of interest to you, just real interest. But they say always write about what you know. So, for example, if you were a plumber, and you thought, well, who wants to read a book about plumbers? Don't think about it that way. Think about the unique skills and insights you have and how you can make a book authentic by talking about the issues that come up. But then you could have a plumber find or discover something very interesting and take off on that and make a mystery, if you follow me. Um, when I was doing my doctorate, I used to love to read Stephen King, and because it was such a diversion from studying, you know what I mean, and statistics and all of that. And it took me away, and I enjoyed the retreat. And as a younger kid, I had loved reading Edgar Allan Poe because there was always, a little fear in there that you had to overcome to even finish the book, and a surprise. So my first novel was a horror story. And I wrote a book about New England horror based on old houses that my husband and I had restored. And as I lived in those old houses, I would almost get this connection with who had been there in the past and who had trod on these, worn floors. And there was even a gravestone in the patio of one of the houses, and it had a name on it, and it was a kid's gravestone. And that bothered me for a long time. It stayed in my mind. So I used these things to make a story out of. You have to have a little imagination if you want to write a novel. And you have to take things that are you understand and that are real, and then you have to go further. So you make something pop out of what was there, and then it becomes something else. Um, but in my mind, the best thing to do is to just write. Don't sit around blocked, start writing. And when you write, and if you start describing a character and make the character as rich as you can, talk everything about this person, and then give the character a little voice, pretty soon they lead you somewhere. They know where they need to go, or they know how they need to act if you put them in a dilemma. The plumber's rushing to his next job. He gets a flat tire. As he looks up, he sees that there's smoke coming from a house. He has to do something. Give him something heroic to do, or make something outstanding help happen where he has to help, or where he gets a chance to take a lot of money that he never dreamed he'd ever have. I mean, I'm not saying do this in real life, but you can do it in fiction. You can live through that kind of excitement without getting in trouble.
Yeah, you don't
Um,
want to get in trouble.
yeah, and have another reader. Make sure somebody you trust is reading for you, giving you feedback, and not somebody who's just going to say, "Oh, that's great," because they love you. You need honest feedback so you can improve. A writers group helps many people. They find 4 or 5 other folks that are about like they are, or maybe a few a little bit beyond. You sit down once a week and show them what you've written, embarrassing or not, and get feedback. It's a big help.
It's all great tips. I actually used my daughter to edit my first book.
Oh, great.
That was probably the worst 3 months of my life having her edit for me, but it turned out well in the end. So
Well, what was the book?
it's a 13-step guide to success. It's basically how to be common sense, how to be a better human.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
that's lovely.
And she helped me make it so it didn't sound like I was talking. It sounded like I was writing. So she said that's my biggest flaw. So
Well, you must have a good relationship with your daughter.
I do now, yes, now that I'm out of the military.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Since I was gone a lot when she was young, so when I got
That's
out,
hard.
it had us. We got connected really well when she published her book right out of high school. I went on a book tour with her. That
Wow.
that made us grow closer together.
And what did she write?
The Unexpected
The
by Lexi
unexpected.
LaMonica,
Huh.
and that's on Amazon as well.
Okay. Well, then I have some more things to buy.
Awesome. I'm glad to help you.
My husband will shoot you, but
I can bob and weave. I'm all right.
okay.
Well, Cindy,
That's right.
this has been great chatting with you. Thanks again for coming on, and I look forward to checking out the Red Toque and hopefully getting the book club to jump on it.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the help, and you're a wonderful host.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. That's themisfitnation.com to catch up on all of our episodes and also to get some of that great Misfit Nation gear. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling because we are